All right, terrific stuff coming up. Joining me now is a distinguished former Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, a dear friend of mine. Steve, thanks for coming on. Let's talk a little bit about this reciprocity. What's your kind of overall general sense of it? How do you see this?
Larry, it's great to see you. I break it into two pieces. There's the 10% tariff that's across the board. I think, as you've talked about, I think that should be put into reconciliation and scored. And then the reciprocal tariffs, I hope they come down to zero. I hope the idea is that there can be negotiations and that we have free and fair trade in both directions, and those come down.
I love the idea. Put the 10% basic tariff, that's the basic charge, put it into reconciliation and see what comes of it, all right? We might need it. We can maybe get more tax cuts, maybe not. I think that's a great idea. I might have to adopt that idea, Steve Mnuchin. I like that. Ted Cruz didn't like my other idea of tariff dividend for taxpayers, but we'll see. Short-term versus long-term. There's going to be adjustments. Supply chains have to be altered. How tough is that going to be for the economy, Steve?
Well, Larry, as you know, certain products can be moved pretty quickly. You can buy a U.S. car instead of a foreign car. But there's a lot of products that supply chains take a long time. So I like the idea of the president creating trade credits. So if you're Apple and you've agreed to build a big factory in the U.S. and you're going to commit a lot of capital, give them credits for doing that so that they can use that against the tariffs on bringing things in where you can't move the iPhone right away. That would take years and years. So I like the idea of incentivizing people to build here. But since it's going to take a long time, give them credits along the way.
I haven't heard that. Has he mentioned that?
He hasn't, but that's the idea that I like to incentivize people to build.
I like that a lot. That might be very helpful. And many, people are well-intentioned, want to follow the policy. This buys them some time and gets rid of some of the hurt. I like that. Long-term, I mean, he had to do something. We started it 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago with China. Too many unfair trading practices, Stephen.
Well, there's no question in the case of China, what we had been doing in the past didn't work. And there's no question, as you know, Larry, because you and I were there, the mere fact that the president put on tariffs was the first time they ever came to the negotiating table and agreed to do things. And I think the phase one deal was a good start, but they're not living up to many parts of that. And I think they got to get back to the table and negotiate.
And we were talking with Jamieson Greer, the new trade rep, the trans-shipping issue, China going through Vietnam or China going through Mexico. It's really dirty pool. Something had to be done with that too, didn't it?
Yeah, that can be fixed. I mean, that's an issue, but I think that's relatively easy to monitor.
So what's your read on the economy right now? And what's your, the stock market took a big hit today. The indexes were down between 4 and 5% or worse in some cases. Some stocks got hurt a lot more. You're an ace investor. What's your read on the market?
Well, Larry, you got to look at the overall Trump economic plan. And as you know, it's the same game plan. It's tax cuts, regulatory relief, trade, and energy. And there's many aspects to that are very, very good. I think you're right. They got to get tax cuts done quickly. That's a very important aspect of his economic policy. And as you know, he's been determined to remake the trade agreements and the trade deficits. And what you see today, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. The market didn't know what to interpret. The good news is these policies are now out. The market's adjusting to these policies. It's going to impact different companies different ways. But I think the important thing is that the president figures out how to fairly treat people through the transition. And that's going to be something that is an important part of how the economy does.
And we don't know when necessarily, but I'm going to guess negotiations on trade are going to start fairly soon. I mean, there's a lot of reports. Certain Europeans want to negotiate. Israel wants to negotiate. India wants to negotiate. I mean, that should have a calming influence and might produce some positive results.
Well, I think the sooner they can negotiate some of these deals, and they're obviously a lot of work, But, some of the big ones they can get to quickly. And I think having a couple of quick wins on that will be good for the market.
You probably saw it. The dollar kind of got clobbered today. Now, I know long-term bond rates came down, which is good, although it could be a recession signal or not. But are you concerned about the fate of the dollar?
I'm not concerned at all, Larry. I think that the dollar is the safe haven. It's the reserve currency. I think the fact the dollar came down is really, it's just interest rate differentials. And the fact that, interest rates came down as much as they did impacts the dollar short term so that people have the ability to arbitrage the different currencies. But I think the dollar is still the safe haven, and I don't see any risk to that.
And a quick thought on the Fed. The market is starting to price in a lot of Fed rate cuts now. What you make of that?
I think we're going to see, and the Fed has predicted, we're going to get Fed funds down to the 3.25%, 3.5%. I think it's just a question of how long it takes to get there. But I think you see that priced into the 10-year in the market now. And I think that, the market expects that the Fed will cut, and I think we'll begin to see that.
Is Steven Mnuchin a long-run optimist?
I am. The Trump economy, he knows how to do this. He wants his legacy to be a good economy, and I think he's going to steer us towards that.
Yeah, terrific stuff. Steven Mnuchin, wonderful to see you. Thank you for coming on.